Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the landing ramp and took her first breath of alien air. The jungle of Velith Prime stretched before her like a green ocean, filled with trees taller than any building on Earth, and flowers that glowed with soft blue light. She had trained for 15 years to reach this moment, and now humanity's first contact mission had finally begun. "The air is breathable," she said into her radio, "but it smells like copper and honey mixed together." Her team of 12 followed her down the ramp. They were scientists, diplomats, and soldiers, all chosen because they were the best humanity had to offer. Their mission was simple but important: find allies against the Hollow Swarm, the terrible enemy that had already destroyed 3 human colonies on the edge of known space. The Cathari had sent a signal inviting them here. No human had ever seen a Cathari in person, only blurry images captured by long-range probes. Elena knew they were tall and had hard shells like insects, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. They emerged from the jungle like ghosts. 20 Cathari warriors surrounded the human team in seconds, moving without making a single sound. Each one stood over 7 feet tall, with bodies covered in shells that shimmered like oil on water. Their faces had no mouths that Elena could see, only large black eyes and 2 antennae that moved constantly. Elena raised her empty hands to show she carried no weapons. "We come in peace," she said slowly. "We received your invitation. We are humans from Earth." One of the Cathari stepped forward. This one wore golden bands around her arms, and a red crystal hung from her neck. She made a series of clicking sounds, and a moment later, Elena's translator device spoke in a flat mechanical voice. "I am War Leader Cythara of the Third Brood. You will follow me to the Great Hive. The Empress wishes to see the soft creatures who dare to walk among stars." Elena nodded and gestured for her team to follow. They walked through the jungle for 3 hours, surrounded by warriors who watched their every move. Elena noticed that the Cathari never spoke to each other out loud. Their antennae would twitch, and somehow they all knew what to do. She realized they must communicate through some kind of mental connection, a hive mind that linked them all together. The great hive rose from the jungle like a mountain made of amber. It was a massive structure built from hardened resin, with thousands of windows and doorways carved into its surface. Millions of Cathari lived inside, Elena knew from the mission briefings. This was the heart of their civilization. Inside the hive, the air was warm and thick with strange smells. Cathari of all sizes moved through the corridors, some as small as dogs, and others even larger than the warriors. They all stopped to stare at the humans with their huge black eyes. Cythara led them to a massive chamber at the center of the hive. Here, on a throne made of living vines, sat the Empress. Elena had seen images of the Empress, but they did not capture her true size. She was enormous, her body stretching nearly 30 feet across the chamber. Her shell was pure white, and her eyes glowed with soft golden light. But something was wrong. Dark veins spread across her shell like cracks in ice, and her movements were slow and pained. "The corruption spreads," the Empress said, her voice echoing directly in Elena's mind. "I am dying, human. The parasite inside me cannot be stopped. Soon the hive will have no mother." Elena felt a wave of sadness that was not her own. The hive mind was projecting the Empress's emotions, and even humans could feel the edges of it. "We are sorry for your suffering," Elena said. "We came here hoping to build an alliance. A great enemy threatens both our peoples. The Hollow Swarm has already destroyed human worlds, and we believe they will come for you next." The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke again. "We have seen the swarm in our visions. They are the end of all things. Perhaps an alliance would benefit us both." But before the Empress could say more, Cythara stepped forward. Her antennae were pressed flat against her head, a sign of anger. "No," Sithara's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "We cannot trust these creatures. They are soft and weak. They have no connection to the hive. They are poison to our way of life." Elena turned to face the young war leader. "We only want to help. The swarm is coming for all of us. If we do not work together, we will all die alone." Sithara made a sound like breaking glass, a Cathari laugh filled with contempt. "You speak of death as if you understand it. You are mayflies, gone in a blink. Your species is barely 1,000 years old. What can you possibly offer the Cathari?" The argument went on for hours. Some Cathari supported the alliance, believing the humans could help. Others agreed with Sithara, calling the humans dangerous outsiders who would corrupt their culture. The Empress listened to all sides, but made no decision. That night, the humans were given chambers to rest in. Elena could not sleep. She walked to a balcony overlooking the jungle and watched the 3 moons of Velith Prime rise into the sky. She did not hear Sithara approach. The war leader moved like a shadow, silent and deadly. By the time Elena turned around, it was too late. 3 arrows flew through the air. They struck Elena in the chest, one after another, punching through her uniform and sinking deep into her flesh. The pain was incredible, like fire spreading through her veins. She looked up at Sithara, who stood with her bow still raised. "Why?" Elena managed to whisper. "Because you are a threat," Sithara said coldly. "The Velic's poison on these arrows has killed every species in the galaxy. In moments, your nervous system will dissolve, and you will be nothing but a memory. This is mercy. Now you will not live to see your people fail." Elena collapsed onto the cold stone floor. She heard shouting in the distance, her crew calling her name. The world became blurry, then dark. The last thing she felt was her heart struggling to beat as the venom spread through her body. But Elena Vasquez did not die. Her body began to change in ways no one could have predicted. Her cells fought against the poison, absorbing it, transforming it into something new. Where other species had dissolved, humanity adapted. The Cathari gathered around her fallen body, expecting to prepare a funeral. Instead, they watched in horror and wonder as the soft human began to glow with faint golden light. Something impossible was happening, and it would change the fate of 2 civilizations, forever. The Cathari did not know what to do with the human who would not die. They had prepared a funeral pyre, as was their custom for honored enemies. But when they came to collect Elena's body, they found something impossible. Her wounds had closed. Her chest still rose and fell with shallow breaths, and her skin had begun to glow with a faint light, like moonlight trapped beneath water. The healers examined her and stepped back in fear. The Velic's poison was still inside her, they reported, but it was not destroying her. Instead, it seemed to be rebuilding her from the inside, changing her cells into something entirely new. "This is an abomination," Sithara declared. "She should be dead. The Velix has never failed. We must burn her now, before this corruption spreads." But the dying Empress raised one trembling hand. "No," she commanded. "This human has been touched by something greater than us. We will preserve her body in the sacred chamber. We will watch and wait. Perhaps the universe is showing us a sign we are too blind to see." Sithara wanted to argue, but no one could disobey the Empress. The human was carried deep into the heart of the great hive, to a chamber that had not been opened in 10,000 years. There, she was placed inside a preservation pod made of living crystal, and the door was sealed. Elena's crew was imprisoned for many months. They demanded to see their commander, but the Cathari refused. Eventually, a ship was arranged to take them back to human space. They left with heavy hearts, believing their leader was dead. They did not know she was sleeping beneath the hive, changing in ways no one could understand. The years began to pass. In the first year, the Empress finally died. The corruption consumed her completely, and her body crumbled to dust. The hive mind screamed with grief as millions of Cathari felt their mother leave them. Without an Empress, the great connection that linked them all began to weaken. Sithara expected to become the new leader. She was the strongest war leader, the one who had protected the hive from outside threats. But others disagreed. The Cathari split into factions, each one claiming the right to rule. Civil war erupted across Velith Prime. In the 5th year, word came from the stars. The Hollow Swarm had attacked another system, consuming 3 planets in a matter of weeks. The swarm was not a single creature, but billions of them, connected by their own terrible hive mind. They did not negotiate or communicate. They only fed, absorbing every life form they encountered into their endless hunger. The Cathari were too busy fighting each other to prepare. In the 10th year, the human colonies began to fall silent. Earth had been spared so far, protected by distance, but the outer worlds had no such luck. One by one, the signals stopped. The swarm was eating its way across the galaxy, and nothing seemed able to stop it. Sithara received reports of these disasters and felt cold fear in her heart. She had killed the human commander because she believed humans were weak. Now she watched as the swarm proved that everyone was weak against true darkness. In the 20th year, the civil war on Velith Prime finally ended. There was no winner. The fighting had killed nearly half the population, and the survivors were too exhausted to continue. A fragile peace was declared, but the factions still hated each other. The hive mind, once a perfect connection between all Cathari, had become fractured and painful. Sithara was now old by Cathari standards. Her shell had lost its shine, and her movements were slower than before. She spent many nights standing outside the sacred chamber, staring at the door that hid the sleeping human. "Why did I kill her?" she whispered to herself. "What was I so afraid of?" She did not have answers, only guilt that grew heavier with each passing year. In the 30th year, the Hollow Swarm arrived at the edge of Cathari space. Scout ships spotted the first wave, a cloud of creatures so thick it blocked out the stars. The Cathari military, weakened by civil war, scrambled to prepare a defense. The first battle was a disaster. Swarm creatures adapted to every weapon the Cathari used. Energy beams, missiles, biological weapons, nothing worked for long. For every tactic the Cathari tried, the swarm evolved a counter within hours. World after world fell. The Cathari retreated toward Velith Prime, their last stronghold. Billions of refugees crowded into the great hive, and the air was thick with fear and despair. In the 40th year, Sithara led a desperate mission to find allies. She traveled to a dozen systems, seeking any species that might help. She found only ruins. The swarm had been thorough. Entire civilizations had been reduced to empty shells, their people absorbed into the endless hunger. But on one dead world, Sithara found something strange. Human survivors, living in the depths of an abandoned mine. They had changed in ways that shocked her. Their bodies had adapted to the toxic atmosphere, their skin thick and gray, their eyes able to see in total darkness. They were still human, but they had evolved in just a few generations to survive impossible conditions. "How is this possible?" Sithara demanded. "No species changes this quickly." An old human woman looked at her with strange gray eyes and smiled. "Humans are stubborn," she said. "We refuse to die. Our bodies change, our minds adapt. We are water that flows around every rock. The swarm thinks it has killed us, but it has only scattered our seeds across the stars." Sithara returned to Velith Prime, with this knowledge burning in her mind. She remembered Elena, the human who had survived the Velix. Perhaps humans were not weak after all. Perhaps they were something far more terrifying than she had ever imagined. In the 50th year, the swarm surrounded Velith Prime. Their ships filled the sky, blocking out the sun. The Cathari prepared for their final stand, knowing they could not win. Millions gathered in the great hive, praying to gods who did not answer. Cythara stood before the sacred chamber one last time. She placed her hand against the cold door and closed her eyes. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I was young and foolish. I feared what I did not understand. If you can hear me, human, know that I would give anything to undo what I did." And then something happened that made Cythara stumble backward in shock. The door began to glow. Deep inside the chamber, Elena Vasquez was finally waking up. Her eyes opened, and they were no longer the brown eyes of a human commander. They blazed with golden light, the same light that had once filled the Empress's eyes. And across the entire planet, every Cathari suddenly felt something impossible in the hive mind. A new voice, a human voice. Elena sat up in her crystal pod and took her first breath in 50 years. She did not know how much time had passed. She did not know that the galaxy had burned while she slept. But she could feel millions of minds connected to her own, frightened and desperate, and waiting for someone to lead them. The Venom Queen had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same. Elena pushed open the door of the sacred chamber and stepped into chaos. Cathari were running through the corridors of the great hive, their antennae pressed flat with fear. Warning signals echoed through the walls, a deep humming sound that vibrated in her bones. She grabbed a passing worker and felt the creature's terror through the hive-mind connection that now lived inside her head. The swarm was here. They were attacking Velith Prime. The final battle had begun. Elena released the worker and leaned against the wall, struggling to understand what had happened to her. 50 years. The hive mind showed her fragments of memories, images of wars and death and endless suffering. Everything she had known was gone. Her crew had returned to Earth decades ago. The human colonies had fallen silent. The galaxy was dying. But she was alive, and she had changed. Her skin glowed with faint golden light, and she could see patterns moving beneath the surface like circuits of pure energy. When she breathed, she could taste the thoughts of every Cathari in the hive. When she focused, she could send her own thoughts rippling through the hive mind like a stone dropped in water. She was no longer entirely human, but she was not Cathari either. She was something new, something that had never existed before. The Velix poison had rewritten her DNA, blending human adaptability with Cathari biology. She was a bridge between two species, and both sides of her were screaming for her to act. Commander Vasquez. Elena turned to see an old Cathari approaching. This one moved slowly, her shell cracked and faded with age. But Elena recognized the golden bands around her arms, and the red crystal hanging from her neck. "Cythara," Elena said, and her voice echoed with harmonic tones that made nearby Cathari stop and stare. "You are the one who shot me." Cythara lowered her head in shame. "I am. 50 years ago I feared what you represented. I thought killing you would protect my people. Instead, I condemned us all." Elena could feel Cythara's guilt through the hive mind. It was a heavy weight that the old warrior had carried for decades, crushing her spirit more with each passing year. Elena had every right to hate this creature, every right to demand revenge. But what would revenge accomplish now? "The swarm is attacking," Elena said. "How bad is it?" "The worst it has ever been. They surround the planet. Our fleet is destroyed. We have perhaps hours before they break through our defenses and consume every living thing on this world." Elena closed her eyes and reached deeper into the hive mind. She could feel the fear of millions, the despair of a species facing extinction. But beneath that fear, she felt something else. A spark of hope, small and fragile, directed at her. The Cathari could feel her in the hive mind. They knew something impossible had happened. An outsider had joined their connection, and she burned with a light they had not felt since their empress died. "Take me to your leaders," Elena commanded. "All of them." Sithara hesitated. The faction leaders hate each other. They will never agree on anything. "They will today. I am going to give them a choice, unite or die, and I think they already know what the answer has to be." The great council chamber was filled with arguing Cathari when Elena arrived. 5 faction leaders stood on raised platforms, screaming at each other through the hive mind, while their warriors watched with hands on their weapons. The civil war may have ended, but the hatred remained. Elena walked into the center of the chamber, and silence fell like a hammer. Every Cathari in the room could feel her presence in their minds. She did not hide herself. She let them sense her thoughts, her memories, her determination. She let them feel 50 years of dreams where she floated in darkness while the universe burned around her. "I am Elena Vasquez," she announced, her voice echoing through both air and mind. 50 years ago, your people shot me with poison arrows because they feared what I represented. That poison should have killed me. Instead, it made me something new." One of the faction leaders, a massive warrior with a scarred shell, stepped forward. "You are an abomination," he growled. "A corrupted thing that should not exist. Why should we listen to you?" "Because I can save your species," Elena replied calmly. "I can feel the hive mind now. I can feel how broken it is, how much pain you all carry. You have been fighting each other for so long that you have forgotten how to be one people." She turned to address the entire chamber. "The swarm is at your door. They have consumed 1,000 worlds. They have destroyed civilizations older and more powerful than yours. And they are winning because their targets have always fought alone." Elena raised her hand, and the golden light in her skin blazed brighter. "But I am proof that something new is possible. Human and Cathari merged together. If we can become one, perhaps we can fight as one. Perhaps we can do what no single species has ever done. We can stop the swarm." The faction leaders looked at each other. Elena could feel their thoughts, their doubts, their desperate hope. They did not trust her. She was an alien, a former enemy, a creature transformed by poison into something strange and frightening. But they were also out of options. Sithara stepped forward and dropped to her knees before Elena. 50 years ago, I tried to kill you," the old warrior said. "I was wrong. I see now that the universe sent you to us for a reason. You are the Velthara, the poison-born queen that our oldest prophecies spoke of. I pledge my loyalty to you." One by one, the other Cathari in the chamber began to kneel. Some did it willingly, hope shining in their black eyes. Others did it reluctantly, forced by desperation and the knowledge that no other choice remained. Elena watched them kneel and felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had not asked for this. She had not wanted to become a queen. But the universe did not care about what she wanted. Humanity had sent her to make peace. The Cathari had tried to kill her, and somehow she had become the bridge that might save them all. "Rise," she commanded. "We have no time for ceremonies. The swarm is coming, and we have a war to win." She turned to Sithara, the warrior who had once been her enemy. "You tried to kill me," Elena said. "You failed. Now help me save your people." Sithara looked up with tears in her ancient eyes. "Until my last breath," she promised. "Until my shell crumbles to dust." The fractured hive mind began to mend as Elena's light spread through the connection. For the first time in 50 years, the Cathari felt like one people again. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the hollow swarm sensed something new on the planet below. Something that did not feel like prey. Something that felt like a threat. Elena stood at the command center of the Great Hive and studied the holographic display that showed the swarm surrounding Velith Prime. Billions of creatures formed a living shell around the planet. They were not like any life form Elena had ever seen. Each one was a twisted mass of absorbed DNA, pieces of 100 different species merged into hungry monsters. They had no individual minds, only a collective hunger that drove them to consume everything in their path. "They will attack the northern continent first," Cythara reported. "Our defensive weapons are weakest there. We have perhaps 6 hours before they breach the atmosphere. 6 hours to save a civilization." Elena closed her eyes and reached deep into the hive mind. The Cathari were unified now, their thoughts flowing through her like rivers joining the sea. But even unified, they were not strong enough to fight the swarm. They needed more. They needed humanity. "Show me what happened to my people," Elena commanded. "Show me everything." The hive mind contained memories from thousands of Cathari who had traveled the stars during the 50 years of Elena's sleep. Those memories flooded into her mind now, and she saw the fate of humanity. Earth had survived. The swarm had not reached the homeworld yet, blocked by the brave sacrifice of the outer colonies. But the colonies themselves had suffered terrible fates. World after world had fallen, consumed by the endless hunger. But some humans had escaped, and what they had become amazed even Elena. On a world of poison gas, humans had evolved lungs that filtered toxins and skin that resisted acid. On a world of crushing gravity, humans had grown dense bones and powerful muscles that let them move where other species would be crushed. In the empty void between stars, humans had learned to survive in tiny ships for generations, their bodies adapting to zero gravity and recycled air. Humanity had scattered like seeds in the wind, and wherever they landed, they had taken root. "We are the most adaptable species in the galaxy," Elena whispered in wonder. "The swarm thinks it destroyed us, but we just changed." She opened her eyes and looked at the Cathari commanders gathered around her. "I need a ship," she said. "I need to send a message." "A message to whom?" asked one of the faction leaders. "To everyone who is still fighting. Humans, Cathari, any species that has not surrendered to the swarm. This war has gone on for 50 years because everyone fought alone. It is time to fight together." They gave her a small communications ship, one of the fastest in the Cathari fleet. Elena modified it herself, using knowledge that flowed through her strange new mind. The Velix transformation had done more than connect her to the hive mind. It had enhanced her brain in ways she was still discovering. When the modifications were complete, Elena activated the signal. It was not a normal transmission. It was a pulse that traveled through both normal space and the strange dimension that the hive mind used for communication. Only certain beings could hear it. Cathari connected to the hive, and humans whose neural patterns matched a specific frequency. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of Earth," she broadcast. 50 years ago, I was shot with poison arrows on an alien world. I should have died. Instead, I became something new. I am proof that we can change, that we can survive, that we can overcome anything the universe throws at us." She paused, feeling her message echo across the stars. "The hollow swarm is coming for Velith Prime. They think this will be just another meal, just another world to consume. But they are wrong. For the first time in this war, humans and Cathari will fight together. For the first time, the swarm will face united resistance." Elena's voice grew stronger with determination. "If you can hear this message, come to Velith Prime. Human survivors, scattered across the galaxy, it is time to come home to the fight. Cathari warriors on distant worlds, your people need you. Anyone who has lost loved ones to the swarm, anyone who has watched their world burn, this is your chance for revenge." She ended the transmission and waited. For hours, nothing happened. The swarm continued its slow approach, tightening its grip around the planet. Elena began to wonder if her message had reached anyone at all. Then the first ship appeared. It jumped out of hyperspace on the far side of the planet, a battered human vessel covered in scars from 100 battles. More ships followed, human shuttles, Kethari cruisers, and strange vessels that Elena did not recognize. They came in ones and twos at first, then in dozens. Elena watched through the hive mind as the fleet assembled. 300 ships gathered around Velith Prime, crewed by survivors from a dozen species. They were outnumbered 10,000 to 1 by the swarm. But they had come to fight. A message arrived from one of the human ships. "This is Captain Torres of the Survivor Fleet. We thought all the Kethari were dead. We thought we were alone in this fight. Then we heard your voice in our heads, Commander Vasquez. How is this possible?" Elena smiled. "I died and was reborn, Captain. The universe has a strange sense of humor. Are you ready to win a war? We've been waiting for someone to give the order." Elena turned to Sithara, who had been watching the fleet assemble with tears in her old eyes. "You see," Elena said, "we are not alone. We were never alone. We just forgot how to find each other." She walked to the center of the command room and raised her voice so all the Kethari could hear. "The swarm has a weakness. They adapt to whatever threatens them, but they can only adapt to what they understand. They have consumed 1,000 species, and every one of those species was predictable. They fought in logical ways, used logical weapons, died in logical patterns." Elena's eyes blazed with golden light. "But humans are not logical. We are chaos. We are stubborn and reckless and impossible to predict. We throw ourselves into danger not because we think we will win, but because we refuse to accept defeat. The swarm has never faced anything like us." She activated the communication system that linked her to every ship in the fleet. "All vessels, this is Commander Vasquez. The swarm expects easy prey. They expect us to run or surrender. They expect us to die quietly, like all the others." Her voice rang with fierce determination. "Let us show them how wrong they are." The fleet moved into attack formation. 300 ships against billions of swarm creatures. It should have been hopeless. It should have been suicide. But Elena Vasquez was done being hopeless. She had died once and come back stronger. Now she would teach the swarm what it meant to fight against humanity. The final battle for Velith Prime had begun. The battle for Velith Prime was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Human pilots flew their ships in wild, unpredictable patterns that the swarm could not anticipate. Kethari warriors fought with renewed strength, their hive mind burning bright with Elena's golden light. And Elena herself stood at the center of it all, coordinating the defense through both technology and telepathy. The swarm adapted quickly, as it always did. When the fleet used energy weapons, the creatures grew shields to block them. When they switched to missiles, the swarm developed armor. Every advantage lasted only minutes before the enemy evolved past it. But humans adapted too. "Switch to ramming speed," Captain Torres shouted over the communication channel. "If they block our weapons, we become the weapons." A dozen human pilots aimed their ships directly at the largest swarm creatures and accelerated. They ejected at the last moment, floating in space as their vessels exploded against the enemy. Other ships swooped in to rescue the pilots, who were already laughing and asking for new ships to crash. The swarm had never seen anything like it. What species deliberately destroyed their own vessels? What kind of minds would treat death as a strategy? Human minds. But even human chaos could not win this battle forever. The swarm was too numerous, too relentless. For every creature they killed, 1,000 more pushed forward. The defensive line around Velith Prime began to crumble. Elena knew what she had to do. "Sithara," she said through the hive mind, "I need to reach the overmind." The old warrior turned to her with shock in her eyes. The Overmind? That is impossible. It sits at the center of the swarm fleet, protected by millions of creatures. No ship could get through. I do not need a ship, Elena replied. I need a pod, something small enough to slip through their defenses, and I need you to trust me. Cythara was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I have spent 50 years waiting to make up for what I did to you. If this is how I can help, I will make it happen. They found a small transport pod, barely larger than a coffin. Elena climbed inside, while Cathari engineers modified the exterior to look like swarm debris. If everything went according to plan, the creatures would ignore it as just another piece of floating wreckage. What are you going to do when you reach the Overmind? Cythara asked. Elena smiled and held up a small container filled with glowing liquid. Do you recognize this? It is Velik's poison, concentrated and modified. The same poison you used to kill me 50 years ago. Cythara's eyes went wide. But the Veliks made you stronger. What if it does the same thing to the swarm? The Veliks did not make me stronger, Elena explained. My human DNA did. The poison just activated something that was already inside me. The swarm has consumed 1,000 species, but none of them were human. Their DNA cannot adapt the way mine did. To them, this poison will be exactly what it was designed to be. Pure death. The pod launched. Elena floated through the battle in darkness, surrounded by explosions and screaming ships. The swarm creatures ignored her, just as she had hoped. Her small pod drifted deeper and deeper into the enemy fleet. She could feel the Overmind now. It was a massive presence in the back of her consciousness, a cold hunger that touched everything the swarm touched. It was not truly intelligent, not the way humans or Cathari were intelligent. It was more like a computer, processing information and directing its creatures through pure instinct. And it had noticed her. Strange. The Overmind's thoughts echoed through Elena's strange hybrid mind. You are not Cathari. You are not Swarm. What are you? I am human, Elena replied. We are the species you thought you destroyed. We are the chaos you cannot predict. And I am here to end your hunger forever. The Overmind laughed, a terrible sound that shook Elena's mind. You are one creature. I am billions. What can one creature do against the swarm? Elena's pod crashed into the outer membrane of the Overmind's core. She pulled herself out and stood on the surface of a living ship the size of a small moon. The flesh beneath her feet pulsed with evil life. You asked what I can do? Elena shouted into the void. I can die. I am very good at dying. I have done it before. She plunged her hands into the Overmind's flesh, driving the container of Velik's poison deep into its body. The modified toxin spread instantly, carried by the creature's own circulation. Elena felt it flowing outward, touching every connected creature in the swarm. And then the screaming began. The Velik's poison was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It dissolved neural connections, destroyed the pathways that linked mind to body. One by one, billions of swarm creatures began to die. But Elena was still connected to the Overmind. The creature's death throes pulled at her mind, trying to drag her down into darkness. She felt herself fading, her strange hybrid consciousness dissolving along with her enemy. Is this how I die for real? She wondered. After everything I survived, is this the end? Then she felt something else, 100 minds reaching for her through the void. Human minds, Cathari minds, all grabbing hold of her consciousness and refusing to let go. We have you, Commander, Captain Torres shouted through the connection. Hold on, we are coming. A rescue ship burst through the dying swarm, scattering creatures that could no longer fight. Strong hands pulled Elena from the Overmind's surface. She collapsed into the arms of her crew, barely conscious but alive. Behind her, the swarm died. The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with silence. Billions of creatures simply stopped moving, their connection to the Overmind severed forever. They floated dead in space, monuments to the hunger that had consumed the galaxy. Elena woke up 3 days later, in a medical bay on Veleth Prime. Sithara sat beside her bed, looking older and more tired than ever. "You saved us," the old warrior said. "The swarm is dead. Scattered remnants remain, but they are mindless now. They can be hunted down and destroyed." Elena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every part of her body ached. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild. The surviving faction leaders have agreed to form a new government, one that includes humans as equal partners. They want you to lead it. They want you to be our empress." Elena shook her head weakly. "I am not your ruler. I never wanted to be a queen. I am just a soldier who refused to die." She reached out and took Sithara's hand. "You should lead them. You have learned from your mistakes. You have grown. You know what it means to be wrong and to become better." Sithara looked at her with something like wonder. "You forgive me after everything I did?" "Forgiveness is how humans survive," Elena said. "We let go of the past so we can reach for the future. I need to go outside." Sithara helped her walk to a balcony overlooking the jungle. The 3 moons of Veleth Prime were rising, just as they had on the night Elena was shot 50 years ago. But everything else had changed. Human and Cathari shits filled the sky. Survivors from a dozen worlds were arriving, ready to help rebuild. The swarm was gone, and the galaxy was free. Elena looked up at the stars and smiled. "We are coming," she whispered to all the humans scattered across the universe. "Hold on. Humanity is coming home." Sithara stood beside her, and together they watched the dawn of a new age. The Cathari would tell this story for 10,000 years. They would carve Elena's name into their histories and teach their children about the human who would not die. And across the galaxy, other species would whisper a warning to anyone foolish enough to threaten humanity. Never try to kill a human. You will only make them stronger.